Today is a launch day for a new Christopher Ward watch. You've seen it in the thumbnail. It's the updated version of my much-loved C60. I'm very kindly joined by Mike France from Christopher Ward. We're going to talk all about the watch. I was lucky enough to have one of these in hand for the last couple of weeks, so all the footage you'll see is a watch that I have actually reviewed. I've had it in hand. It was a very close to production prototype. The images you're seeing is almost 99% what the watch you'll receive is. There's some slight change with the inner ring around the bezel, but you'll see those images on their website. I'm very kindly joined by Mike France, who is going to talk all about this new release, all of the enhancements that they've done to what I think was already one of their best dive watches. Thanks, Mike, for joining us.
My pleasure, Sam, as always. Good to see you.
Before we get into some of the key elements that I wanted to focus on, because there's some great little upgrades to this watch that I definitely want to go over. I'd love to know the inspiration behind the new model, Mike.
By all means, Sam. Yeah, and it is an interesting story. We'd started thinking about Trident 4, the fourth iteration of the Trident collection, back in around about the start of the pandemic. April, May 2020. And as part of that process, we're very fortunate, as you know, to have a really large and dedicated Christopher Ward forum. And they're never shy at letting us have their opinions, that's for sure. And we encourage that. But we also are in dialogue with them about all sorts of things, including new developments. We always give them a preview of what's coming. But in this instance, we decided to go even earlier and ask them to describe what their perfect dive watch might look like. They embarked upon a huge piece of internal discussion and debate amongst themselves, and then produced a really extensive piece of market research for us based on what would constitute their perfect Trident. It came into sort of four big categories, most of which we were sort of probably headed towards anyway, but actually one or two were slightly surprising. But the big number one thing they wanted was a slimmer Trident. They wanted a Trident that came down in size, representing, I think, a general movement anyway, as you're well aware in the marketplace, for maybe smaller but certainly slimmer under the cuff models. And so we've done it. We've taken the 42 mil, which is the thickest, is now down to 11.5 millimeters high. So all of these are 11.5 or less in height. There are three sizes: the 38, the 40, and the 42. And the 42, that's nearly 2 millimeters less than. Now, to the rest of the world, other than those like us who love watches, 2 millimeters doesn't seem a lot. But in the watch world, 2 millimeters is a cliff face. It's gigantic. So that was a big step, and that was a direct result of their feedback. The second thing they wanted was more luminosity. Everybody always wants more luminosity. This is something we also know, and we were always looking to increase luminosity. We use the very best lume there is. We use GLX-C1 Superluminova, and the only way you can get more luminosity is by creating more volume of it. So on the hands and indexes, the design team created slightly wider, slightly deeper receptacles for the lume on both the hands and the indexes. Anything between 15 and 20% more luminosity on the 300. They also, and this was a bit of a surprise to us, but one we were really pleased to go with, they wanted to see the movement. They wanted an exhibition case back. So we've put it in. And I think that's to do with lots of people relatively new to the world of watches who may be buying a Christopher Ward for the first time. Maybe it's their first ever mechanical watch, and they are absolutely fascinated by and want to see the mechanism. So, which is a lovely thing to do. We could have shaved a little bit more off the height if we'd gone with the closed case back as per the current Trident 3 collection, but it looks brilliant, and we still are down to 11.5 mil and lower. And then the fourth thing that they really wanted was screwed links on the bracelet. And what they wouldn't have known is that we were already there, and there is a but to this, and the first of the screwed links came in with the Aquitaine, which also has a taper down to 16.5 mil, which has gone down very, very well. And with the Aquitaine, we went for screwed links, the theory being it's easier for customers to change out links themselves. We had resisted this for some time because actually we didn't want people to damage their bracelets by getting the screwdriver out. On the Aquitaine, it's like most screwed links, it's from both sides. So you have to be quite careful and adept. We have continued to work with our manufacturer, and we've now got the same solution as Rolex. I'm very pleased to say we are down, and we can have just a screw from one side, making it far easier for the customer to change out links. They only have to worry about changing on one side. It sounds like it's an obvious thing to do, but actually the tolerances that are required to do that are minute. And that's why our manufacturer was very reticent to do it to begin with. The design and engineering team here kept working with the manufacturer. He was concerned because he thought he would get so many rejections that it would put his costs up, and therefore inevitably it would put our costs up. But we worked with him, and he had the attitude of, I want to crack this if I can, and we've got it. And we're now working to tolerances of 0.03 millimeters on the flushness of the screw heads. That is a third of the width of a human hair.
I'll second that. I adjusted the bracelet on this prototype version, so you'll see just how close the tolerances are. The 2 millimeters that you mentioned, it does sound small, but I'm wearing the prototype that I got sent was the larger, the size, the 42 millimeter size. It fits my 7.2 inch wrist perfectly. My C60 Pro is the 40 millimeter version. And I was almost scared a little bit of going to the larger size of that one. But this new one, because of that slimness of the case and because of the case back, really well balanced. That was one of the striking things, was that immediately it is a larger size. The case is just so well balanced on the wrist.
Well, I know you're a big fan as well of the light catcher case, and when you combine that slimness with the light catcher case, it really does work. Much smaller than you'd think, doesn't it? And it's interesting that you've noticed that. So I think a lot of people are going to notice that. It's a very, very wearable watch. As well, we've improved the quick release system, and this version has added yet another 2 mil to the micro adjustment. So we're now up to 10 millimeters of micro adjustment, which I think is a real boon for people, especially when we have concerted heat waves like we've just had here. And the bracelet is the unsung hero of a dive watch, because roughly 70% or more of dive watches are bought with a bracelet. So this is an integral part of a dive watch. And honestly, I think arguably we're now offering a bracelet that's right up there with, I think, the best that there is available. I mean, I know it sounds like a pretty arrogant thing to say, but I genuinely think we are.
No, I actually agree with you. I know we keep going back to Rolex, but on their Oyster bracelet,
Rightly so.
on their OPs and things like that, it's the lightness of it. It's confusing to the eye straight away, because you're picking it up and thinking, wow, that bracelet should have some weight to it, but it has a lightness to it. And that's something that I noticed with your new bracelet as well. It has a substantial feeling to it, but without the weight. And then the other thing we'll go on to as well, which confused my brain, was the bezel. We've talked before about the bezel, and you're always looking to achieve that Rolex feel to it. I think this is the closest of the watches that I've seen, not just Christopher Ward, but the closest that I've seen that's got there. But it still doesn't make sense to me, because the bezel is thinner. I don't know how that mechanism is so smooth, but in a thinner bezel.
It's what goes on underneath it that matters. We've continued to develop a mechanism, which we first introduced, as you know, with T3, which was a huge step forward for us. And at the time, we believe we were second best to Rolex in the market. We hadn't quite matched it. Not for me to say whether we've matched them now or not, but we've continued to work on that bezel movement and sound. I have to say, I think it's pretty good, and I'm pleased that you've spotted it. And the bezel, it also offers a slightly different aesthetic to the T3, in that we've inserted the stainless steel to give it a kind of a greater sophistication, I think. And I should say, all of this has come at a cost. We've lost 300 meters of water resistance, and now we're only offering water resistance equivalent to an Omega Seamaster or a Rolex Submariner. So I apologize in advance for for that. But there have to be some trade-offs. That's how we've got the slimness. Less metal, but the same metal, just spent differently, I think, is the way we're describing it. And then you've got, as you will have picked up immediately, this is the first Trident with just the Twin Flags logo.
Yep.
And the self-colored date ring at 6 o'clock. So the nice balance. All of the date rings are self-colored, so match the dial, which is a really nice detail that I think people pick up on, as well as a refined Trident seconds hand, where we've ditched the circle and we've gone for the now increasingly familiar sort of triangular aspect of our second hands. So there's quite a lot going on just in terms of the aesthetic. As you get into the minutiae, there are things here that fans of the brand and aficionados of the brand will see as, hopefully will see as, further refinement. The tour de force, in some ways, the piece de resistance, is all of this comes at a lower cost to the customer.
That's the interesting thing, isn't it? When we were talking before about the case and the refinement of the case, usually when you hear additional case refinement, you expect that to be part of the marketing thing, like, oh, we refined the case, so therefore comes at a higher price but for a more refined feel. But you kind of went the opposite way with it.
We're very transparent, as you know, on we try and be transparent on everything, but certainly on our pricing. And less metal costs less. Probably if we'd kept the price at the same level or increased it, we could have argued, but that's just not what we do. So these are not small changes either. It's in sterling, it's £100 less at entry level. We come in at 695 sterling. I think it's $850. These are really sort of keen prices, and I think as well it might be the right thing at the right time. I mean, the world is, is hitting a sort of cost of living crisis, no matter what country you're living in at the moment, it seems. And I think hopefully this will help more people be able to get onto the Trident ladder, if you will, because it's now even more accessible in price terms. So we're hopeful. You never know until you put these watches in front of the ultimate arbiter, the customer, whether you have a winning formula or not. But the effort that's gone into this watch and the thought that's gone into it, and including the contribution made by our forum, I'm hopeful that we'll have a success on our hands here.
I feel like I should be beating you up a bit more about something, but I really liked it. I can't. First of all, the colour. I was lucky enough to get the green. Which is this the first time that you've done a green?
First time we've done that green bezel green dial. What do you think?
Loved it. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I loved that colour, and I don't think we've talked yet about the orange accents that you've added to the second hand, which ties it into that. The blue one also ties into the concept piece, and it's the blue and orange and the green and orange. It's part of the design language now of Christopher Ward.
Yeah, absolutely, cool. Absolutely. But I think, green has become such an important color in watches, as you know, better than most. And getting the right green is a different green to other greens we've done. I think it just hits that sort of dive into sport look perfectly well. And the match between the bezel and the dial is spot on. At this stage, it's blue. In the 40 and 42, we've got blue, green, black and white. I have to say I love the white, particularly on the orange tropic strap. It's a really fresh combination. We're already talking about where does colour go in this collection in the future, other colours in the future. So and other finishes. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. But certainly, if your reaction is anything, I don't feel you have to beat me up all the time.
One thing I didn't ask you though, which I'm sure will get asked, is I noticed that on launch day there's not maybe a bronze one or one that's a COSC certified.
No. Well spotted, and yeah, just watch this space. I would suggest they may not be that far behind. I suspect.
I've got the previous version. I think there's enough difference between the two. If that's something that people are wondering, because it's what I wondered as well. Is there enough difference to make if I was going to buy the new one? And there is.
Oh yes, yeah.
There's things that I suppose this is the testament to the forum. Is I just recently got round to reviewing this after wearing it for a year, and I loved it. There was very little that I think I could improve, and I suppose one of the interesting things was this new model had things in it that I didn't know needed improving, but now, but it makes sense that they were.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
weird how Apple does that sometimes. They improve things, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that needed improving, but it's all the better for it. So I suppose that's the excellent thing with the feedback from the forum.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, often, your customers, and these are, people, some of these guys, as you know, they're huge collectors of our watches. They know it. They know our collection often better than I do. They really think hard and deeply about stuff. And so, to have this access, be mad not to take account of it. And we've shown it to some of the forum already, and I have to say the response was incredibly positive. So I think they feel that they are the brand, and I think to have a watch that they have been so intimately involved in is in a way really reaffirming for them as well. So, and it's a real pleasure to be able to do that.
Well, check out Christopher Ward's website. The watches are live as of today. You'll see all of the different colours and the pricing available on the UK and the US store as well. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Real pleasure. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Reviews.